And good afternoon. Good evening, almost evening. By the way, and I'll probably say it again at the end, next week I am going to have another class, but it may not be on this day at this time. It may be on this day at a different time, or it may be on a different day. So I'm working on my schedule for the week, so just stay tuned in for the emails. When I send it out on Sunday, it'll have the correct date. So just keep an eye on that so you don't just get in the habit of coming at the same time as we've been doing it. Okay, I've got some other things happening next week and scheduling. But I am going to do something pretty special around this time next week that's different. It's going to be playing-wise. But anyway, so that said, good afternoon officially. I think I'm going to open up with a little song first, and then we'll dive into some learning you stuff. And then also, I'm going to encourage it. If you have a topic or something, a question that you want to have answered, it could be how do I use that button right there, or this or that or the other. Go ahead and put it in the chat. If I have time today, I'll get to it. If not, because I can download the chats. If you put it in the chat to all, when I download these classes to upload them into our Patreon or YouTube, whatever platform we decide to do it, I also do get those, all right? And then, depending on our time, we'll see if I can address one or two today. Today, I'm going to actually address a topic that's a really common one over the years, and I didn't get it in the chat, but I got an email. And I hope she's on today, but if not, she'll have to go back and watch it. But let me get started with a song. We'll see if the sound sounds okay. And let me use some music here. Why don't I? What page is this on? I know this one a little bit by heart. No, not that one. Okay, yeah, let's do this one here. Oh, yeah, that'd be a good one. I could use the music if I goof up. All right, so here we go. We'll start off with a little music for you. Just a good old classic that many of us played over the years. Whoops, take two. Oh, there we go.
parts. A lovely organ piece.
Thank you. Thank you. All the applause. Oh, we had an unmuter by accident, so I had to reach over and do mute all. Hopefully I didn't goof up along the way. All right. Well, that was one of my favorite songs to play. I might say that about a lot of songs. What a Wonderful World. But that's not what the class is about today. It was just an opening song to play for you. But I will reference that song a little bit later. So I had an email that came in. And let me take a look here. And it was basically asking, let's see if I look it up here. It was talking about the orchestral. Let's see if I could find it there. Oh, here we go. More info. Great to elaborate more on the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my email behind the screen. So we're going right, lower, right, on and off. Okay. All right. So the question that I got was pertaining to the orchestral and the solo section. Now, I know some of you on here, by what I can see and what I know, some of you have the A series platform. Or SU series platform. They're very similar in the way they work. So, you know, the SU series, which I'm not going to name off all of them, but, you know, Royale, Stardust, Palladium, etc. The A platform, Sterling, Patriot, Imperial, Liberty, Sterling. Did I say that already? All right. So, and then there's the EYEX platform on the touchscreen models because they work differently than the EY models. Like the journeys and the fanfares are considered EY, but the way that this right hand or this right section orchestral solo works totally different. So be conscious of the fact that when I mention a certain series that it pertains to you. Oh my gosh, my darn TV. Here we go again. Darn it. Let me pause this for a second, folks. All right. So let me just ramble off some very quick. What I was going to do is put on the screen all the models, and then you figure out which one is yours, and then whenever I reference it, you'll know. So I'm going to say very quickly a bunch of them. On the SU series, you have Sensation, Performer, Royale, Rhapsody, Stardust, Palladium. I might be missing one in there. A series, Imperial, Sterling, Imperial, Sterling, Prestige, Patriot, Symphony, Liberty. I might be missing one in there, I'm not sure. And then the EY, Inspire, Rialto, EX, Marquee, Grand Marquee, Aria. Now some of you have those special packages that the transformation. So if you have Aria 22, Aria, Star Enhancement, that's all in the EX, okay? So when I reference those models, I might say the A and SU series into one, and I'll reference EY and EX in another, so because I don't have an EY or EX here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this panel over here. And you know, one of the things we always encourage you to do is turn on the organ, put on a rhythm, and use your rhythm presets, right? Because that's where you get all these sounds. Or maybe you want some additional setups. and you use your category setups. Okay, so those are great preset sounds for you to use. But we also say it's okay to, we encourage you to use the buttons. Maybe you want to get creative and create your own sounds. And then I have a lot of students that will say, well, I don't want to break it or do anything. Just remember, there's a reason the organ has a button. And the button is used to do what? To be pressed. So it's okay to press the buttons on the organ. If all else fails, you can always just do this. Just power it off or do your reset or your home button and then let it power back on. Okay, you can always start from scratch. So don't be afraid to push buttons. Okay, you have a total reset option. Sometimes I'm loading things and I'm doing things and I go a little too fast, and what will happen is the thing will lock up on me. Well, I'm here to tell you, these are computers. They're man-made products. There's a reason why there's a reset option on a product. There's a reason why there's a quick reset or total reset or a 5-finger reset, as some of you. It's because stuff happens, okay? My Mac computer, it's not the high-end one, but it was a high-end one when I got it. There's a reason why you have a hardware reset to do on it. Sometimes they just lock up and don't do stuff. So it's okay to use the capabilities of the instrument in pushing things. But the question I had was about the orchestral and the upper and the lower, what have you. So let me fill you in on some of the ease of this. Here's what I would encourage you to do. If you want to experiment with choosing some of your own sounds for a style of music, this is just one way that you can try it. When you put on a rhythm, does anybody have a rhythm on their organ that they can tell me? And I'll just start with that one and go with the flow. Anyone? Hopefully it's on this one. Pick a rhythm on your organ that you like.
Latin.
All right, so the Latin category. So here's what I'll do. Is I'm going to push the Latin button, and I have 2 pages of Latin styles. I have bossa nova, rumba, cha-cha. I'll leave it on bossa nova, okay? Now, if your organ, when you turn it on, automatically your rhythm preset or your style setup, rhythm preset is the A and the SU series, EY and EX, it's style setup, okay? But when you turn it on, it automatically comes on for you. So the minute I press a rhythm, it goes from a yellow tint light to like a red, and some buttons are easier to see than others. So basically, it set it up for me. But if I want to experiment with my own sounds, you have a couple ways of doing this. One way is I'll use a preset, and then I'll change the sounds from there, okay? Sometimes that does not work to your advantage, and here's why. If I put on this rhythm and normal rhythm preset, and it has a combination, I'm looking on the organ right now, and I notice, now let's see if I can do this here. Give me a second. You're going to lose the camera for a minute. But I'm going to do something else here and see if I can do this. So I'm going to get you a close-up if I can. Bear with me here. Let's see if this one will work. If it does, if it doesn't, then I'll just have to, okay. Now this one I can move. Is that visible there? Is it zooming in a little bit? Oh, okay. Let's see there. How good is that? I hope that it's clear enough. Let me put it on my speaker here just so I can see what you're seeing there. It's kind of okay. A couple head nods there. Gary, is it somewhat visible on your device? Jerry? Good enough? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a little pixelated. I'm kind of zoomed in a little bit here. Okay. Now, this is going to be tricky because I'm going to put my hands in here and I might want to try to refocus. All right, so right now I have Latin, which pulled up the bossa nova style. You may not be able to see it over there, but it's selected. I have just a rhythm preset on in this case. On the EYEX series, if you want the exact same setup, vintage is commonly the ones that came from the A series, okay? But here's where I'm headed with this. So right now it has this button on, that button on, these two, and those two. But look at the volumes here. If you can see that, you'll see that the orchestral, okay, is at 100% volume. And we'll get to the sounds in a second. On the solo, it has two of them on, which we'll get to, but you'll notice the volume's not at 100%. Okay? So if I start making changes to this, to the sounds that I want, and I start selecting solo sounds, for example, it's going to give me at a certain, this preset is designed to work for how it's set up. So right now, let me just play a little bit of this bossa nova, and here's what it's telling me, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the screen there. Let's see if I dim these lights here. That doesn't make any difference, does it? No. Let me see if this will work. Does that make it any better?
Yeah, that's a little so
Yes.
Can you see the words? Is it too dark?
Yes, now you can read the
Yes.
word.
Okay, let me see what happens when I do this. Oops, wrong button. Is that still okay, or did I make it worse? Is that better? Okay, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it there. It's going to be my little bit fuzzy. All right, so what it's telling me here, now some of you don't have this window, okay? And the reason why this window is here on the Liberty, Sterling, Symphony, and the Patriot, they eliminated what we call the quick picks, and they just gave us the two buttons. And so now anytime these are selected, it's telling you what sounds are in there, okay? Before, on some of the models, it had the panel of buttons, and then a lot of times the Genius button would be lit, and you'd have to go in and see it, okay? So anyway, so right now, now in the EYEX models, you have Orchestral 1, Orchestral 2, Solo 1, Solo 2, each individual category. All right, so again, I'm going to try to keep referencing everything as I go. In this case here, more than likely, if you all set up this style and you put on rhythm preset or style setup vintage on the EYEX, this is the type of sound you're going to get. And what it's telling me is right here, this says vibes, okay? That's Orchestral 1. Orchestral 2 says guitar. And then it's kind of hard to see there, but what it says is Solo 1. That says jazz guitar. So that's Solo 1. And then Solo 2 is guitar 12 string. Okay? This is what the organ set up for me. So if I'm playing, if I don't just play the rhythm and I just play the notes, here's what you have. Okay? Now, here's where the first confusion would be for a student playing. They'd say, well, it says vibes and guitar, but I only heard vibes. Well, there's a reason. And the way these buttons are pressed will tell you. And I'm going to address the EY and EX in a second, okay? So, on the instrument, we have vibes, in this example, guitar, Spanish. Solo 1 has guitar, jazz 2, and Solo 2 has guitar 12 string. Okay? So if you want to know where those sounds are, you have to know how this works. Now, on the EX and EY, you'll have one orchestral, Orchestral 2 separately, Solo 1 separately, Solo 2 separately. Okay? Now back to this and we'll revert back. So, in this case here, this little upper button, I don't know if you could read that, it says upper on, and it says lower left and lower right. So the upper on button is on and the lower right button is on. All right, so here's what this is telling me. When there are two orchestral buttons on, the one that's solid and the upper and the lower right is on, the one that is solid will go on the upper keyboard, and the one that's blinking will go on the lower right. Okay, before I go on, let me address the EY and EX. What would happen in this exact same scenario? On the EY-EX, if this same setup was on your instrument, your orchestral 1 would have the vibes, and the upper button would be on only. Your orchestral 2 would have the guitar Spanish, but the lower right button would be on only. So they're two separate setups. On the A and the SU series, when they developed this concept of putting two on, you had to turn on the upper on and the lower right together, and whatever one was solid, when that is happening, in this example here, if you could see my two fingers, the upper on, the lower right, they're both selected. So when that's happening, the one that's solid will go on the top, and the one that's blinking will go on the bottom. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is turn off the solo section for a minute, and I'll come back to that. So right now it says upper on and lower right. They're both solid. These two are on, and it says in the screen here, vibes and Spanish guitar. So if I play some notes, okay, there's the vibes. On the lower right keyboard, you can't see that, but I'm going to play the lower right keyboard. So that Spanish guitar sound you just heard me playing is on the lower right keyboard. Okay? On the EY and the EX, this example would be like this. Orchestral 1 would have the vibes with the upper on. Orchestral 2, separate section, would have Spanish guitar, and the lower right button would be on. Okay? In this case, I'm repeating myself because sometimes when I go over this, some people get it, some people have a hard time with it. I want to make sure that you understand. These two are lit. One is going to go to the upper, one is going to go to the lower right. How does that happen? The solid in this case goes in the upper, and the one that's blinking goes on the lower right. So before I go any further, let me give a couple of examples just using what's on here. Okay? Let me zoom back out for a minute so you can at least see me playing the keyboard a little bit. Okay? So, again, upper on, lower right on. This is solid, this is blinking, and in the window it says vibes and Spanish guitar. So again, here's the vibes. And on the bottom keyboard, here's the guitar. Okay? Now, if I turn off the lower right and the upper on button is still lit, and I have vibes and Spanish guitar on, what's going to happen is both of those sounds are going to go to the upper. Let's test the theory. So there's a guitar and a vibes. Now watch this. I'm going to put lower right on. The sound that's in the solid is the vibes. The blinking one is the Spanish guitar. So we're back to where we were. This is going to have vibes and this is going to have a guitar. But now what I'm going to do is turn off the upper. So now the lower right button is the only button that's lit. So it's telling me that there's going to be something assigned strictly to the lower right. Any guesses to what sound is down here? Well, I have the vibes and the guitar. So now both are going to the bottom keyboard. Okay? So, the solo section works exactly the same way. So, if you have two sounds on in the solo section, let me put that back to where it was earlier from the rhythm preset. Okay? I have a solid and a blinking. And it says the solo one has jazz guitar 2, and the blinking says guitar 12 string. So the same thing applies. Right now it says lower right. So right now both of those sounds are in the lower right. You notice it's not as loud though, right? That's because the volume over here is not at 100%. But I'll leave it at that volume. Now if I put on upper on and lower right, the same thing happens again. The one that's solid is going to go in the upper keyboard, and the one that's blinking goes on the lower right keyboard. So the one that's solid, number 1, it says jazz guitar. And the one that's blinking is 12 string down here. Okay? So if I put on just the upper, both of those sounds are now on the top keyboard. Okay? Nothing's on the lower right keyboard. Now, let me put it back to where it was when I set up the organ with just the Latin style. So right now I have on the upper, the solid one is vibes. The lower right, the blinking one is Spanish guitar. The solo, I have lower right only, and that means jazz guitar and 12-string guitar. Okay? I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. I turned on Latin, I put on the bossa nova style, and I put on just rhythm preset. Normal rhythm preset or rhythm preset. On the EYX series, it might be style setup vintage. And it more than likely will give you the same setup. Okay? So essentially, the vibes is on the top, the Spanish guitar that's blinking on the orchestral is on the bottom, guitar jazz 2 is on the bottom, and guitar 12 string. So basically, they put 3 guitar sounds on this bottom keyboard, and then the vibes on top. Okay? So, A and SU series owners, any questions so far? No? Either that's good or I got your head just thinking a little bit. Okay, now let me reference again. Let me zoom this camera out a little bit, if I may. Let me reference again the EY and the EX in this exact same example. Okay? In this example, if this was set up on one of those models, here's how it would look. You'd have orchestral 1, orchestral 2, go this way, solo 1, solo 2. Orchestral 1 will have just the vibes. Orchestral 2 will have the guitar Spanish. Solo 1 will have jazz guitar, and solo 2 would have the 12-string guitar. And in each one would be individually assigned. One would say the upper, one would say the lower, and so forth. So here, it was a little bit different back in the day because as the years progressed, Lowrey was finding ways of combining more sounds together until they changed the way that worked. All right? So that's a little bit of the orchestral and the solo. So why am I going through all of this? Yes. Question? Okay. So question we get is why we're going all of this. I got presets, Robert. I get you all presets. And yes, you have the presets. If you're fooling around and something ain't working, all else fails, you have presets. Because you may want to experiment with your own sounds. And a lot of times what happens, people will start with a setup the organ gives us, and they start putting their own things in there, and then they don't hear it, and they're not sure what's happening. and we have to, then they call us and they wait for us to call back or whatever the case is, and then we have to explain, oh, this is where that sound is and so forth. So I want you to have a good understanding of how those sounds are assigned, whether they're assigned for you or you if you want to. In this case, if I wanted to experiment and add some sounds in the solo section, I have to remember it's always a good idea to look at the panel. In this case, the volume of the orchestral is at 100%, and the volume of the solo is at, looks like at about 70%. So if I start changing sounds in the solo, what's going to happen is I may not hear them the way I want it. Okay? All right. Now before I go further, Dobrila, is that you with your hand up?
Yes.
What's your question?
How do you switch from primary to the secondary, say on a tap, in the middle of the song? Say suddenly I would want to switch not to be vibes on a top, but on a bottom, and the guitar on a top, and I want to do it at the end of the, say, first verse or something.
Okay, so let me repeat back to you what I'm hearing, and you tell me if this is right. So when you're playing, you want just the vibes here, and then at some point you want the guitar here.
Yes.
Okay. So in this example, fortunately, it's already set up that way. But if you were setting it,
how do you switch them?
You just play.
So on a top, it shows the opposite. Your orchestra 2 is now primary.
No, it depends on how you have it set up. So for example, orchestral 1 has vibes. Orchestral 2 has guitar. Hold that thought. Solo 1 has jazz guitar and Solo 2 has a 12-string guitar. Okay? So if these buttons were off and I had to set it up myself, here's what I would do. I have the vibes and the guitar. All right? The vibes is number 1 in this case. And I'm going to keep that as a solid button. And if you're doing it yourself, you get the solid one by pressing and holding the one button. And while you're holding it, you press the other. Okay? So in this example, before I do anything else, the orchestral, the solid one, when I go assigning it, will be the one that goes to the top keyboard. The blinking one will go down to the bottom. Okay? Now.
I know that, but listen. I don't want vibes alone, so I would have my lower right off. So my both instruments will be on a top. Okay?
Okay. So you want vibes and, say, guitar on the top first?
On the top. And,
okay.
And the vibes are primary. Now, for the second verse, I want just a slight change. So I want to switch now that guitar is primary and vibes are secondary, because it is a gentle change, Now, if I want to do something else with the solos and ending the map and so forth, I can do this later. But can I do it?
Okay, so the first part is you'd like both vibes and guitar on the top. All right, got that part right, correct? Is that correct? The first part is you want vibes and guitar on the top in this example.
Yes,
okay,
and vibes.
You're playing along, and then maybe the next part of the song you want it to do what?
I want now guitar to be primary and vibe secondary.
You want on the same keyboard?
On the same keyboard, yes.
Okay. Well, in that example, I have vibes and guitar together. I'm going to have just the upper button on. So now they're both on the top keyboard. Okay? Now, if I wanted to switch, then I would just push the guitar button first and then the vibes. And now in this case, the solid one is Spanish guitar, because you can do it either direction. It just depends. Now, if I said, well, let me put upper on and lower right on. Well, now in this case, the solid one is guitar and the blinking one is vibe. So now the blinking one is going to go down to the bottom, and the solid one's going to remain on top in this.
Oh, I understand that part.
But that's you press the primary one, if you call it that, is always the one you press first, and while you're holding it, and then when you press the second one.
Okay, but it will have to be a slow song. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing is when if you get to the point where you're setting it up a certain way and you want to make another change, this is what I go back to what I talked about, I think last week, which is learning to save the presets on the instrument, because once you start making changes that involve a lot of this, yeah, you're going to be thinking like I would. It's easier to do on a slower song. On a song that has a faster tempo, it's harder to do that stuff. So if you have a sound that you like, get in the habit of saving it onto the organ. And that's why I kind of covered that last week. And I always keep putting those instructions out. So that's helpful. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, EYEX people, again, just remember, you have 2 orchestrals and 2 solos, but they separate each one individually. Now, there's also one other sound that I want to point out that some people sometimes don't realize it's there. Some of you figured it out, and it's kind of and this is actually on all the series, and it's kind of in a unique place, and it's sometimes a little hard to work with depending on how you're using it. All right, so many of you, if you have a touchscreen model, you have these tabs here. Okay? So, and in dead center, there's 2 red tabs. And one should say lower, one should say upper. And it's real simple. If you turn the lower one off, then any sound that's programmed for the left hand, it's just not going to make it sound. That doesn't mean you don't play the chord. You still have to play the chord. It just means you won't hear a left-hand chord sound. If you turn off the upper tab, any sound that's programmed in these tabs will not activate here. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this set up here, and I'm going to turn off everything. What should not happen if I did it right is there's no sound. Okay? No sound there. So, now what I'm going to do is turn on the upper tabs. All right? And let me play the top keyboard and see if we hear something. Okay? Well, there's a vibraphone, isn't it? These tabs here are commonly flute tabs which create organ sounds, as many of us knows. Okay? And then you have your yellow string tabs here. All right? Now in the EY and the EX, I believe, I'm trying to picture it in my head, you have the flute tabs. Yes, Gary?
Yes.
Okay. But the string tabs are not visibly on the screen here. They come up through the window, okay? But that all references the tabs, okay? So over to the right here, however, there's a kind of a hidden one if people aren't aware of it. Once you find out that it's there, then we know what to do with it. And it says upper genius, so I believe it says upper sounds on the EY and the EX, okay? It's another, think of it as another orchestral sound. And so sometimes that's on, sometimes it's off. But you can get one more sound like an orchestral sound in there. In this case, and if you activate and deactivate it, it typically shows up on the screen. In this case, it says vibraphone. So most people, if that's off, there's nothing on. Most people think that these tabs are just for your organ sounds. And the secret to organ sounds is start with 16, one secret. Start with 16, and then do any other combination. You'll always get a decent organ sound. Okay? But if you have all the tabs off, you have nothing. But if you go over to the far right, if you're looking for that one extra sound that you want to put in, it could be a guitar, and when you access it, you can scroll through all the same list of sounds as you would in the orchestral. So it's an extra place to pull out a sound. Okay? So here's a common thing that happens. Now we're going to get into, I want to change what's there and find some of my own sounds. So I turn on Latin, I put on rhythm preset, I get this. That's great. Let me change it. Let me just see if I can find something new. So it's the people go into here and they go into the orchestral. All right. Now, here's what I'm going to recommend. If you don't want to change the way they have these set up, upper, lower, and all that stuff, here's what I'm going to recommend. On the EY and EX models, you have a button that just simply says sound. All right? You can just touch it and scroll, and it won't mess up the way the organ's set up. You also have a button on your screen that says sounds. And when you activate it, it lists all of the sounds that's put on the instrument. On the EY or the A and the SU series, you have a button over here. I don't know if it's legible on there. I'll zoom in just for a second. Okay? You'll see a button there that says Genius. And when you press it, what it shows you, if it's legible enough, it's going to be hard. It looks a little pixelated on my end. But it shows you all of the sounds that's programmed in these same buttons. So on this instrument here, on this screen here earlier, when we were showing you, it's showing you the same thing. So some of you don't have this screen. Okay? They just made it, they put it in two places. You always have the screen, but if you push this Genius button, if you have the single window, what'll happen is it'll populate this on the screen. And right now it's telling me all of the sounds that's programmed in those buttons, just like I mentioned a little while ago, okay? You can actually change all the sounds from right here. So watch what happens. I'm going to put on, I'm going to change the vibes to, it says trumpet lead, okay? Now, before I go any further, here's the common what happens. So I go, okay, I put a trumpet lead in there. And then you go to play the keyboard. I'm going to play the upper keyboard here, just a few notes, and watch what happens. Did you notice? You hear the trumpet, but did you hear something else? Could you hear it? There's a vibraphone in there still. Because I changed it here on the screen, but everything else is still set up the way it is. Remember that lone Genius button? There's a vibe there. So what happens is they'll change it here, and then they start to play, and they go, well, it sounds like a trumpet, but it doesn't sound like a trumpet. It sounds like a trumpet with something else. And that's one of the reasons why sometimes if you're making changes to a sound that's already programmed to the organ, you have to kind of be conscious that other things are programmed in there. So in this case, I'd have to turn off this Genius and get just a trumpet. So we always say it's okay to change a preset that's already there. You can always move it around, do whatever. But sometimes there's other things programmed in places, and when you go to play it, you go, wait, I hear it, but I don't. There's something else happening, and that tends to be a common challenge for students. So if you're one of those that maybe you can try it that way, but just remember, you have to look to see where everything else is programmed at the time. Now, right now on the bottom right keyboard, I have 3 guitar sounds. So if I change one of these, and I change it to a saxophone, or let's see, we have guitar 12 string. I'm going to change the solo. I'm going to hit solo, and then I'm going to scroll to flute. Okay? Now watch what happens. You hear the flute? It says smooth flute. Let's put on a jazz flute. Wait a second. I kind of hear the flute, but I still hear the guitar. Now this is where people start getting flustered. Well, oh, there's a guitar programmed over here. So you kind of see it gets a little tricky when you're using a setup and you're trying to change the setups, which you can do, but you have to be conscious of what's already programmed in other places. So here's a recommendation that I have. If you want to just kind of experiment, and you want to create some of my own sounds, okay? Here's what I would suggest. When you turn on the organ, I told you earlier, rhythm preset or style setup comes on. All right? Let's just turn it on, and let's turn off that rhythm preset button for a second. This is one of several ways, okay? This is not the way to do it. All right? So I'm going to turn that off. I still have the power up sound, which is typically organ, and looks like nothing down there, just organ, all right? Now if I put on that Latin rhythm again, I'm still going to have the same sound. Okay? There's nothing programmed there, all right? Now what I can do is we'll turn off all of the organ sounds. So there's nothing there. And that's the flute tabs. Now in the orchestral, if you go to the orchestral and solo, there's always something there. Now you have the ability to pick and choose what you want and where you want it to go. So there's no sound, and if I play here, you're going to just hear a chord. It's just going to, okay? Now you have the ability to choose what you want, and you just say to yourself, what do I want to put on this keyboard there? And you say, well, how about a saxophone, okay? So you have a couple ways of doing this. Hit one of the Genius buttons, or put on your Genius button here, or if you have the EY or EX, put on your sound button, or press the sound button in the orchestral section, whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to push the Genius button, and what shows up as a piano is there, and I'm going to change it by scrolling to, what did I say, saxophone? So I'm going to go up to the S's, and there's a bunch of saxophones. How about 10 or 50 sax? Okay, well, that's great. You can go into the Genius 2, and it's set up with bells. And then you can scroll and put something else in there. How about brass? I'm just going to pick whatever I see. Brass section. Now, as I'm doing this, now when I touched it, the saxophone turned off, and so you can go in and individually choose the sounds you want. Here's the other thing. The volumes are almost at a maximum, so when you go to adjust them or pick the sounds you want, they're already at full max volume. Whereas earlier, this volume was set a little lower, so if I started putting sounds in there, I might have a hard time hearing it. The point of this is this. You have thousands of presets in some cases that are great setups, and I encourage to continually use those. If you ever run into a preset that you like, and you think it's something you can use for other songs, as I referenced a class or two ago, you can always save anything you have set up onto a preset. You can always choose a rhythm with a rhythm preset, let it set up, and you can always change the sound that it gives you. But keep in mind, you want to look at how they have it set up and where those sounds are going, okay, as I referenced at the beginning in the class. Yes? Is that a question?
Hello?
Hello.
No, I don't have a question.
Okay. Well, hello anyway. So if you want to experiment on your own and just kind of, let me just try this myself. Turn on the organ, turn off rhythm preset, or turn off style setup, and then turn off the sounds that come on, like the organ sounds, the 16 and 4. And what should happen is when you do that, there should be no sound on in the upper keyboard. So here we go. I turn it on. Wait for it to power on. So I get the traditional. All right. I'm going to turn off rhythm preset. And then I'm going to come over here and turn off 16 and 4-foot flute. And what I have is nothing.
I don't know.
Okay? So, that being said, now you can go in and start picking the sections. And don't forget that Genius button over here. That's another sound. And then you can kind of experiment a little bit, and it makes it a little bit easier as far as assigning them. And it kind of gets you in the habit of understanding and getting a getting more acquainted with it, being more comfortable using it. So if you ever do use a rhythm preset or category preset and
Video stop.
whoop, I don't know what that was, but and you do
What's the deal? Fair enough?
okay,
Okay. Now, before I do that,
Don't.
let me do this here. Okay. And if you get in the habit of doing that, you'll just get a little more comfortable. And then while you're playing a rhythm and you're using presets, if you ever run into something you like, you go, I like that preset, but let me make a few changes to it, then you have a better understanding with it. But the reason why I'm saying it this way is because, again, this gives you the opportunity to push buttons, do things, try to get an understanding of it. And all else fails, you can always hit the reset or home button, start from scratch, put on a rhythm preset, and then on your way. Okay? So, I can spend a whole nother class, a whole nother hour, should I say, just on this topic, because there's many other things that can happen with this. There's many other ways that these things can be combined. I wanted to just cover the basic operation of how to use that. And although I don't have an EY or EX, hopefully I referenced it well enough if you're sitting in front of your instrument or it makes sense to you. Okay? Any other questions? Any questions out there?
Robert, just John from Hazleton.
Yes.
I have a quick question for you, buddy.
Okay.
Would it be possible, I think I asked this in a couple of different classes, to put out a list of the locations on the organ? Now, I have the Grand Marquee, but this would apply basically to everybody. Put out a list of the locations where we could go ahead and put a custom sound, like the Genius button, and I know in ours says York 1, York 2, Solo 1, Solo 2, so that'd be for each manual we can go ahead and put basically five sounds on the top and I guess 5 on the bottom. Is there any place else that we could go ahead and put different custom sounds to make up our own?
So when you're saying custom sounds, you're talking about like finding a saxophone, piano, guitar.
Right.
Okay. So basically here's how it works on all of the models. Whether it's laid out like this or laid out like yours. You have up to 5 sounds you can choose from the list of all the instruments in the organ to put in your right hand or lower right, okay? You have Orchestral 1, Orchestral 2, Solo 1, Solo 2, and you have the upper sound or Genius, okay?
And also upper theater.
Right, well, we'll get to that because what I was going to say next is then there's the organ sounds and the theater sounds, okay? But just in the common sounds that we're used to using, the clarinets, pulling up that list of voices from the instrument, that's the most common ways. Then you have your flute tabs and your string tabs technically are 2 different types of sounds. You have organ and strings. And then you have, as we just heard, the theater, okay? So you can essentially have 2 orchestrals, 2 solos, one upper. And then in the organ category, if you will, you have your flute tabs, your string tabs, and then the theater. Okay? Now, your orchestral and your solo, let me think about this before I say it so I don't have to correct myself. Okay. I'm going to reference both series. On the A and the SU series models, you can't have both orchestrals on the top and the bottom at the same time. You can have both on the top, you can have both on the bottom, and you can have one or the other. Okay? And the same goes with the solo section. All right? On the EY and the EX series, because each section is on its own, the orchestral 1, as an example, say it was a piano. You can assign that to the top or bottom or both. Orchestral 2, you could put on bells, and you can assign the top or the bottom or both. So essentially, you could have orchestral and solo on the top and the bottom. You could have, if you wanted it that way, you could put up to 4 or 2 orchestrals, 2 solos on the top, and you can put those on the bottom at the same time. I think I'm saying that correctly. I'm visualizing in my head. I'm not meditating. All right?
You could put all 4 on the top and all 4 on the bottom.
Correct. So you can assign 2 orchestrals at the top, 2 in the bottom at the same time, 2 solos on the top, 2 at the bottom at the same time. On the A and the SU series, you can assign 2 on the top or 2 on the bottom, but you can't put them at the same time. You can assign one or the other. So I wanted to make sure there's some clarification there. On your upper tab here, okay, you can assign that, I believe, you can assign it to the top or bottom, but not both. Is that correct? I'm trying to
Yes,
visualize.
and all the flute tabs will go
And
to
the
the
flute
bottom
tabs,
if you assign them
because there's a separate tab that says tabs to the lower.
to lower.
And if you do that, it does exactly that. It sends them to the lower. And if you turn it off, it puts them to the top. Okay? John, did that answer the question? I think I answered it.
Yeah, pretty much. What I basically meant, and I think Gary helped answer it too, was if, I'm not trying to make extra work for you, but just like if you could type up a list of the locations that we could go at. I know the Genius and the organ solo, but I knew there's other places hidden in the organ that I could go ahead and change the sounds. Like say I want to layer a band, put whatever in, and then that basically. So I guess you answered my question. But my question is, can somebody type up a list of where we can put the all these different specific sounds?
I think I can do that.
Okay,
But if I do, you'll have to be patient.
no problem. I understand you're busy.
I need to see one in my head. But it'll be kind of like what I told you today.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to start with that.
Thank you. Yes, you did answer my question.
Okay, any other questions? I got a couple things I want to show off and play. I want to play for you. Let me see in the chat. Are there any questions in the chat? I can't see how do you switch from primary? Oh, that was from earlier. Got that. If you have any other, oh wait, there's more stuff here. Oh, there's a lot of stuff here. Can a US file created on Prestige be played on a Marquee? The answer is yes. Let me just do a couple of these here. If I think it's a short answer, I will. Can a USB file created on a Prestige be played on a Marquee? The answer is yes. You have to have a conversion program for it. So if you have a USB stick with A files, you can get a conversion. And then Gary sort of answered that. So if I kept reading.
That's from a previous Zoom class.
Oh, was it?
The
What?
only
Oh,
the
you
only
know
question
what?
today was
You know what? I'm just realizing because I'm using the same link every week, what's happening is it's picking up the previous chats.
yeah.
I didn't realize that. Are there some new questions today or no? Just one?
No, there's just the one question.
Okay, whew, made my job easy today. Okay, so what I'm going to encourage you to do, if you have a topic that you'd like discussed further, send me an email, rroman@fletchermusic.com, because I'm going to try to do these frequently. I'm going to do one again next week, and I'm going to do, my goal is to have one once a week next month as well. I just don't know the date and time yet. Send me an email, and if you don't, that's fine. I can dream up of many things to talk about. Sometimes I like to reiterate some of the things we talked about as well. The other thing I want to share with you, if you haven't seen it yet, is I pulled out from an archive. I've been waiting to introduce this. And a lot of people love using presets and what have you. And on the website, if you logged in today, let's see if I picked the right one there. Let's see, where's my website? Oh, here we go. We have on the website, if you notice on the virtual class at the very top, it had this announcement here. This is a software package, and last time I did something like this, there were a lot of questions, so I'm going to give some clarity. This is an amazing package. If you like some of the songs you see there, there are 37 songs listed in that in the middle of that flyer. Typically, a lot of the artists over the years, when they sell their software and make arrangements and presets for songs, their typical it's common practice that they charged about $10 a song. So it's about $370 worth. What this USB has 10. Actually, there's an error, a typo in your favor. There are actually 11 setups I discovered because they have a 0 position. There are 11 setups made for every one of those songs. Every one of those songs is also recorded. And this was done by a few different artists that we've have in contact with, some in staff and some that work kind of behind the scenes outside of Fletcher, if you will. And so there are 37 songs. Each song has 11 setups, not 10, that you can play for this with the songs. And each one, like if you load in A0 or B0 or C0, 0 automatically kicks in the introduction for you. And so it's about a $370 value. And so what we're doing is we're offering that to anyone who has. Now, unfortunately, it is only compatible with the following models that you see there. So if you happen to have a Sterling Patriot, Symphony, Liberty, Inspire, Rialto, Marquee, Grand Marquee Extreme, Aria, RE22, or one of the Star Enhancement models. So if you go online there, and if it's something of interest, all you have to do is click on one of the 2 links. We did some research. Oh, now the other thing is it does include this, a printed songbook. All of the songs are also loaded on the USB as well, if you like to just print them out. But it will also include a printed songbook to go along with it. And then when you click on the button, it'll automatically open up to the thing here. If I did it right, yeah, and then you just fill in your information, et cetera, okay? So if you're interested, that's up there. I'll post it on our Facebook and our socials in an email. I played What a Wonderful World. I used some of those setups today that you heard. Last week, I think I did Fly Me to the Moon, and I did Hit the Road Jack. I'll play another song from the book here. By the way, here's the, see, I think I have the songbook here. Here's the list there. Which one do I have? Screen sharing. So there's the list. And the way we conveniently did it is you load in group 1 and you don't have to keep loading for each song. So when you load in group 1, it'll say on the USB 1 through 5, A will be for Sandoval, B will for B, and so forth. If you load in group 2, bank A, B, C, D, E, and et cetera, et cetera. And all of the songs, of course, are in Easy Play. So, pulled up the right thing here. So there you go. There's all of the songs and Easy Play music. You got some great songs in there. I'll play a couple songettes just to give you a little taste, and then be on the lookout for a new class next week. And let's see here, like a couple workshops on organs that are in our instruments be last play organ. Okay. All right. By the way, even though, Janice, thank you for your question, I'll feature one of those models. Everything I taught today is really applicable to all the models. So keep that in mind. I had to reference the EY and EX because obviously that's a little bit different, but keep that in mind, okay? Maybe next week I'll switch out models to do the same workshop on a different organ. What I'm going to do is play a couple songettes for you here, and just to kind of give you an idea. This song I never really learned to play, but I always loved hearing it. Love Will Keep Us Together. What group is that in? Group 1, okay. I'll just play a few notes because I don't want to make myself look too bad on camera. Okay, so I put in just C0 and it automatically sets it up. Take 2. I hit the wrong note. Here we go. That's all I know so far. I was playing it earlier, and I was hitting notes that I didn't want. But it's a fun song to play. And for you country fans out there, let's see here. You got a little Johnny Cash in here. Thank you. And let's see, I'll do one more here for you. I'll play it, let's see here. Oh, this is a fun one here. Where did it go? I just saw it. Over the Rainbow. I love that song. Okay. Over the Rainbow. I'll play it all the way through using these presets here. Go to the right page here. Okay. And it asked me to set up group 6. And group 6. Ooh, this will be a little different than the way I normally play it. Okay. Why, thank you. We hope you enjoyed that. And of course, I don't know if you saw it on there, but it's also, we put a little extra incentive in there. So if it's something that you might think you might appreciate, you could save an additional 15% off of the price. So anyway, it's on our website there. Like if you go to the website on the virtual classes and events, and I'll put it on our socials, and something a little extra you can have, and it'll be a lot of fun. What we're doing is we're printing the materials now, and waiting for all the orders. We'll start shipping the orders out next week, so that's why I put in the flyer to ask for about a 10 to 14 day before you actually get the shipping. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming today. We hope you enjoyed today's class, and hope you got something out of it today. I got me on gallery view now, so I can see you. You're doing okay. Did you learn something? Yes, hands up, thumbs up. Someday, all right, someday I might do this for fun, but I won't do it without warning you. I might do a class like this one day, where we go something like this, where we can actually sit together. Might have a little fun. Anyway, okay, enough. I'm just having my own little fun right now, folks. Don't mind me. Stop. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. It's nice to see your happy faces. Thank you for being a part of our family. Hope you learned something today. Stay safe. Keep playing music. Mwah! See you real soon. Email me if you have any questions. Call me or email me.